Commander Aaron Vey woke slowly, the hum of the ship's engines barely reaching his ears. The bridge of the Odyssey felt unusually cold, the lights dim, and a strange stillness pressed against the walls. He sat up in his chair, trying to shake off the lingering fog of sleep that clung stubbornly to his mind. When his eyes focused on the view screen, the first thing he noticed was not the usual spread of glittering stars, but darkness. Endless darkness. He blinked. At first, he thought it was a trick of his tired mind. He had navigated countless star systems, seen suns explode in brilliant colors, and traveled past nebulae that painted space in shades he could barely name. But this was something else. The stars were gone. Every single one in the system, maybe even further beyond. The usual points of light that guided travelers, that had comforted humans for millennia, had vanished. The void outside was pure and oppressive. "Lyra," Aaron said, his voice steady but low, carrying an edge of unease. The ship's AI responded almost instantly, its tone calm as always. "Good morning, Commander. You have been in stasis for 29 hours. Vital signs normal. Star systems outside current sector appear absent. Energy readings suggest anomaly in proximity." Aaron rubbed his eyes and leaned forward. "Absent? What do you mean, Lyra?" "There are no stellar bodies detectable. Sensors indicate unusual energy signatures where stars should be. It is unlike any natural phenomenon recorded in human history." Aaron's mind raced. He had trained for emergencies, for unknown threats in deep space, but nothing could have prepared him for this. Space without stars. The concept seemed impossible. Stars were the backbone of the galaxy. They were life, light, and navigation. And now, they were gone. He pressed his fingers to the edge of the control console, the metal cold beneath his touch. "Show me the readings," he said. The holographic displays flickered to life, painting the bridge with a soft blue glow. Energy readings pulsed in strange, irregular patterns. It was as if something enormous and deliberate had taken the stars, leaving behind only the ghost of where they had once burned. Aaron stood, his boots clanging softly on the metal floor. He walked to the observation window, peering into the void. His stomach tightened. There was a faint shimmer far off in the darkness, an outline against the black that seemed alive. Not a planet, not an asteroid, but something massive, drifting slowly, swallowing light in its path. "Lyra, do you recognize that object?" "No known ship, station, or natural formation matches the signature, Commander," the AI replied. "It is emitting energy patterns that respond to cognitive stimuli. It appears aware." Aaron's breath caught in his throat. The ship's sensors were reading signals that seemed to interact with his own thoughts. It was impossible. Yet there it was. The entity, colossal and silent, moved deliberately, as if it knew he was watching. He sat back heavily in the captain's chair, running his hands through his hair. "How do you fight something that can sense your mind?" he muttered. Lyra remained silent for a moment before replying. "Perhaps confrontation is not necessary. Observation and understanding may be more effective." Aaron shook his head. Observation, understanding. Those were human tools, not weapons. But in this void, he had nothing else. Hours passed. He monitored the entity, tracking its movement as it drifted through the sector. Stars should have been visible in the far distance, small and steady. Yet nothing appeared. The more he watched, the more the emptiness pressed against him, like a heavy curtain smothering light itself. It was not fear that gripped him, but a deep, gnawing awe. This was not just space anymore. This was something beyond comprehension. In the quiet moments, his thoughts drifted to humanity's history. Humans had always reached for the stars, had always marveled at their light. Entire generations had looked up at the night sky and dreamed of exploration. And now, all those stars, all those dreams, were being stolen, or at least hidden. The thought weighed on him heavily. He was not just a commander of a ship, He was a witness to the vanishing of the familiar universe. The next day, the anomaly shifted. Slowly, deliberately, the massive entity began moving toward a nearby star system. Irene realized, with a sinking feeling, that the disappearance of stars was not random. This being, or whatever it was moving with purpose. He tried sending a signal, a simple pulse, a greeting encoded in the universal frequencies humans had always used to communicate with potential life forms. There was no response, only the pulsing, slow rhythm of the entity, echoing faintly through the emptiness. He decided to investigate further. Climbing into the smaller scout vessel docked on the Odyssey, he prepared for the journey. The AI provided coordinates and warnings, but Aaron ignored none of them. He had faced unknown dangers before, but nothing like this. The entity was too immense, its energy field too powerful for conventional weapons. Observation and careful study were the only tools at his disposal. As he approached the entity, the darkness became oppressive. The scout's sensors flickered erratically. Instruments designed to detect energy and matter overloaded under the sheer magnitude of the anomaly. Aaron gripped the controls tightly, sweat beading on his forehead. And then he saw it more clearly than before. The entity was not solid. It shimmered, a mass of twisting energy and semi-organic structures, like a living nebula. Stars, or what had once been stars, seemed to be embedded in it, their light absorbed into the mass. It was as if the entity had swallowed the cosmos itself, taking the very essence of stars into its being. Aaron's mind reeled. How could something like this exist? What kind of intelligence could operate on such a scale? And most importantly, why? The entity shifted again. And this time, it reacted to him directly. A wave of energy pulsed outward, brushing the scout vessel like a tide. Systems flickered, and for a moment, Aaron felt as if his thoughts were no longer entirely his own. Images, feelings, fragments of memories not his own swirled in his mind, visions of light, of energy, of consumption. He staggered in his seat, gripping the console for support. "Lyra," he shouted. "What is happening?" "It is responding to your presence, Commander," the AI said, calm but urgent. "Maintain composure. It is not acting with hostile intent, but it is aware of you." Aaron exhaled shakily, trying to steady his mind. Awareness, not hostility. That was a subtle but crucial distinction. He realized that understanding was not only possible, it was necessary. If the entity truly responded to thoughts, then logic alone would not communicate with it. He would have to reach it through something deeper, something human. Hours turned into days as he maneuvered carefully around the entity, documenting its energy patterns and movements. It was exhausting, mentally and physically, but Aaron felt a strange connection forming. The entity was vast, unknowable. Yet in its silent pulses and shifts, it mirrored something profoundly familiar. The relentless drive to survive, to exist, to claim energy where it could. One night, alone in the cockpit of the Scout, he looked out at the black void where stars should have been. Despite the fear, a spark of determination flared within him. Humanity had faced impossible odds before. Humans had crossed galaxies, survived hostile environments, and found ways to communicate with alien species. This was different, yes, but the same principles applied: patience, observation, creativity, and courage. And then, as he drifted closer to the entity, he noticed something that made his heart skip a beat. Tiny sparks of light flickered inside the mass, almost like the memory of the stars it had taken. They were faint, fragile, and flickering, but they were there. He realized that the entity had not destroyed the stars, it had absorbed them, storing their energy. Perhaps it was not malevolent, only desperate. A new determination settled over him. If the entity could be reasoned with, if its purpose could be understood, then maybe, just maybe, the stars could be returned. And if humanity had learned anything in its history, it was that understanding the unknown often required courage, creativity, and empathy, tools that humans wielded better than any weapon. Arenve took a deep breath, gripping the controls of the scout with renewed resolve. The stars were gone, yes, but they were not lost forever. And something, enormous and alien, had taken them. Now, it was up to him to understand why, and perhaps find a way to bring the light back. He set a course alongside the shimmering mass, ready to confront the unknown, ready to witness the unimaginable. The void was silent, oppressive, and terrifying, but Arenve felt a spark of hope. Humanity had reached for the stars once before. Perhaps it could reach them again. Arenve floated in the scout vessel, drifting alongside the colossal entity. The dark expanse around him seemed heavier than before, as if the void itself pressed down. Yet within the pressure there was movement. Tiny sparks of absorbed light shimmered inside the mass, flickering weakly, almost like a heartbeat. It was alive, and it was aware. He checked the instruments for the umpteenth time. The energy readings were unlike anything humanity had encountered. Entire star systems were missing. Yet the energy was not gone. It had been absorbed, stored, and perhaps even reshaped. Lyra's voice cut through the quiet of the cockpit. "Commander, caution is advised. The entity's energy output fluctuates unpredictably. Proximity beyond this distance could compromise your vessel." Aaron nodded, though he felt an irresistible pull toward the being. He had to understand it. Every instinct screamed danger, yet the spark of curiosity and human determination pushed him forward. He began to analyze the pulsing energy signatures, looking for patterns, rhythms, or responses. It was difficult. The entity did not speak in words, did not emit any language humans could decode. Its communication was raw energy, intent woven into currents of power that flickered and shifted like lightning caught in slow motion. He tried simple tests first. Arene sent pulses of light toward the entity, small bursts of energy encoded with basic patterns and frequencies. The mass responded with subtle ripples, energy flows that mirrored the pulses. Lyra interpreted the data in real time. "It is responding, Commander, but the reactions are unpredictable. Patterns suggest it may be analyzing intent rather than content." Aaron's mind worked furiously. It was as if the entity was reading him, not in words, but in thought, in emotion. It did not respond to logic, it responded to understanding. He realized that the old human tactics of weaponry or reason alone would fail. He would have to reach it on a level that was intuitive, emotional, and creative. He closed his eyes briefly and remembered the night skies of Earth. He remembered standing on a hill as a child, gazing at stars so numerous they seemed to stretch into eternity. He remembered the stories humans told about constellations, the poems and songs, the way starlight had inspired invention, courage, and hope. Slowly, he began to transmit energy pulses designed not to harm, but to mimic starlight itself, patterns that resembled the very essence of what had been lost. The entity reacted immediately. Streams of energy shifted inside its massive body, coalescing around the faint sparks of light already present. It was as if it recognized something familiar. Lyra's voice, careful and calm, said, "Commander, the energy fluctuations indicate recognition. Continue transmitting." Aaron's heart raced. For the first time, he felt that the being might understand. Perhaps it had been lonely in its existence, consuming stars to survive, unaware of the life those stars had supported. Perhaps it was not malevolent, only desperate. He focused, sending pulse after pulse, carefully modulating patterns, trying to communicate the beauty and value of the stars it had taken. Hours passed. The entity moved, slowly adjusting its trajectory, but it did not attack. It was cautious, massive, and enigmatic, yet it allowed him to approach. Aaron realized that patience was as important as action. Any sudden movement, any aggressive signal, could provoke a reaction capable of consuming nearby systems. He reminded himself that human ingenuity was not just about technology, it was about empathy, creativity, and courage. As the day passed, Aaron began to notice faint shapes inside the entity's structure. They were like outlines of planets, suns, and cosmic clouds, preserved in the energy streams. It was as if the entity had been trying to recreate the universe it had absorbed. The thought struck him profoundly. This was not destruction. This was survival through preservation, in a way that humans had never seen. He adjusted the energy pulses, shaping them into patterns that mimicked stellar orbits and galactic rotations. The entity responded more strongly. Streams of energy flowed outward, creating faint, glowing rings that reflected patterns of real galaxies. Aaron felt a thrill of discovery. He was not facing a monster. He was facing an intelligence, ancient and vast, seeking to maintain existence in a way humans could barely comprehend. Suddenly, the entity pulsed sharply. The scout's systems shuddered under the wave of energy, instruments flashing warnings. Lyra's voice was calm, but firm. "Commander, maintain stability. It is reacting to your signals. Do not panic." Aaron steadied the controls, feeling a thrill of fear mixed with awe. The pulse carried what felt like raw emotion, a longing that stretched across light years. Images flickered in his mind, faint glimpses of stars being absorbed, of energy flowing into a vast internal web. And then, almost imperceptibly, a sense of curiosity emerged from the entity. It was observing him in return. He continued the communication, sending bursts of energy that mimicked human thought, but also human wonder. Stories, memories, emotions, encoded in light patterns. He transmitted a memory of standing under a sunset on Earth, the sky burning with shades of orange and pink, of feeling the warmth of another person nearby, of watching a child's eyes widen at the first sight of a falling star. The entity responded with a pulse that made the scout hum in resonance. Days merged into nights. Aaron lost track of time, drifting alongside the entity, transmitting patterns and receiving feedback. The darkness of the void no longer felt empty, it felt alive with potential. Slowly, he began to notice changes. The faint sparks of light within the entity grew steadier, more defined. Patterns emerged that resembled constellations. It was beginning to recreate, not just store. Lyra monitored everything. "Commander, the energy patterns suggest adaptation. It is learning from you. Your methods are affecting its internal structure." Aaron smiled faintly, exhaustion tugging at his eyelids. "Then we are making progress," he whispered. "Not through force, but through understanding." The breakthrough came unexpectedly. As he transmitted a particularly intricate sequence representing the solar system of Earth, the entity pulsed brightly. The spark of light representing the sun flared, sending a shockwave of energy outward. For a moment, Aaron feared the worst, that the entity might reject his signals violently. But instead, the flares of light settled into place, and within the entity, a structure resembling the solar system appeared. Aaron's heart pounded. "Lyra, look at this." "Yes, Commander." "It is constructing a model. Not a mere copy, but a living representation of stellar bodies within its energy field. It is remarkable." He realized that the entity was not a mindless devourer. It had been attempting to preserve the stars, perhaps in a way that only it could. And now, with his guidance, it was beginning to understand the value of the original light, the lives it supported, the inspiration it brought to those who gazed upon it from worlds far away. For the first time, Aaron felt a sense of hope. Humanity had faced extinction, wars, and cosmic disasters, yet the human spirit had always found a way. Here, in the blackest void of space, that same spirit had reached across the gulf of incomprehensible intelligence to touch an alien mind. It was proof that ingenuity, empathy, and courage could overcome even the greatest unknowns. The next challenge was clear. If he could teach the entity to coexist with the galaxy rather than consume it, perhaps the stars could be restored. But it would require more than observation. It would require trust between a human and an intelligence so vast that its understanding of life, light, and survival was beyond human measure. As Aaron watched the glowing internal patterns, he allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. Humanity had always looked to the stars with wonder, dreamed of exploring the unknown, and faced challenges that seemed insurmountable. And now, standing on the edge of the impossible, he understood that humans were not defined by their size or strength, but by their creativity, empathy, and persistence. These were the tools that allowed them to survive and perhaps to communicate with beings that dwarfed even the most distant galaxies. The entity shifted again, slowly, deliberately. Aaron adjusted the scout vessel's course to follow. It was heading toward a cluster of still extant star systems, perhaps seeking new energy, but now, it moved differently. It was not consuming blindly. It was cautious, almost careful, as if it had learned that the patterns of light he transmitted were valuable. "Lyra, prepare a detailed analysis," Aaron said. "We need to map the energy flow, the patterns, everything. If we are going to teach it to coexist, we must understand it completely." "Analysis in progress, Commander," Lyra replied. "Preliminary data suggests continued adaptation. Interaction is beneficial." Aaron allowed himself a small smile. After endless hours of drifting in darkness, of fear and uncertainty, a breakthrough had been made. The stars were not lost, they were only waiting to be returned. And if humanity had learned anything, it was that no challenge, no matter how vast, was insurmountable when met with intelligence, courage, and empathy. He focused on the next transmission, carefully encoding light and patterns, his hands steady despite fatigue. The entity pulsed in response, and for the first time, he sensed something almost human in its behavior. Curiosity, recognition, and perhaps even understanding. The void outside the scout was still dark, but inside, something incredible was happening. The process of restoration had begun, and humanity's reach had extended further than ever before, not with weapons, not with force, but with the most human tools of all: creativity, empathy, and hope. Aaron Vey sat in the cockpit, eyes fixed on the glowing patterns inside the entity, and whispered softly, "We'll bring the stars back, together." The scout vessel drifted in the silence of the void, its engines humming softly, as Aaron Vey prepared for the most difficult step yet. He had spent days sending light patterns, memories, emotions, and fragments of human wonder to the enormous entity. Now, it was time to go closer, much closer. To step into the heart of something that could reshape stars, swallow energy, and communicate through pulses of living light. He stood from the pilot chair and walked toward the rear section of the scout. His body felt heavy, not from gravity, but from exhaustion. His eyes burned from lack of sleep, yet his mind refused to rest. The entity's pulses echoed in the ship like gentle vibrations, constant reminders that it was watching, waiting, responding. Lyra's calm voice followed him. "Commander, your vital signs indicate fatigue level beyond recommended limits. Rest is advised before beginning contact." Aaron shook his head, rubbing his tired eyes. "I can't rest yet. It's changing, Lyra. It's learning. If I wait too long, it might move again. It might go toward the nearby stars. I need to guide it before it makes a mistake." "Understood," Lyra replied, though her holographic avatar flickered briefly as if showing concern. Aaron returned to the cockpit. The entity loomed outside an endless mass of shifting energy and shadow, stretching across the void like a moving horizon. Where stars had once shone, there was only its pulsing glow. Yet inside that glow, faint sparks, tiny imitations of starlight flickered like memories. It had learned from him, now he had to learn from it. He switched the shuttle to minimal power, drifting closer. "Lyra, activate the light converter. Prepare the contact channel." A soft, warm hum filled the cockpit as the custom-built device began to glow. It converted human emotional patterns, memories, thoughts, feelings, into gentle light pulses. The idea had been theoretical at best, something humanity had tested only for peaceful alien encounters. Now, it was the only bridge between him and an intelligence older and larger than anything he had ever imagined. The entity reacted immediately. A long wave of shimmering light rippled across its surface, stretching for countless kilometers. It was not aggressive. It felt like curiosity, like a question asked without words. Aaron steadied himself and triggered the first transmission. The converter projected a slow pattern of warm light, representing calmness, safety, and openness. The same way humans comforted a frightened child or a nervous animal. The entity answered. A pulse spread outward, so large it seemed to bend the darkness around it. Energy enveloped the scout in a soft wave, like a cosmic breeze. The sensors beeped, warning of the massive scale of the fluctuation. But Aaron stayed steady. He breathed slowly, letting the pulse wash over him. It feels calm, he whispered to himself. It's listening. For hours, he transmitted and waited. Transmitted and observed. Images flashed in his mind again. Shapes, fragments of stars, echoes of entire galaxies turning inside the entity's luminous core. It was showing him pieces of its memory. Not in language, but in experience. Aaron saw a vision of a dying region of space, where stars had collapsed one by one, a place where energy had drained until nothing remained but cold emptiness. In the vision, the entity moved through that darkness, absorbing what little energy remained. It was not destruction. It was survival. It was alone, Aaron murmured, heart tightening. It didn't understand what stars meant to us. It only saw energy, not life. The understanding hit him deeply. This being was ancient, older than human history, perhaps older than most of the galaxy. It had survived by absorbing stars, unaware of the consequences for civilizations living near them. To it, stars were resources. To humans, stars were life, hope, and inspiration. He had to make it understand that difference. Lyra, Aaron said softly, let's try something more complex. Load the memory archive. Commander, are you certain? That will open deep emotional channels. The entity may respond intensely. Aaron exhaled slowly. We have no other choice. He closed his eyes as the converter linked to his memories. Soon, the cockpit filled with gentle projections, soft pulses of images encoded in light. Children playing under starlit skies, scientists watching distant suns through telescopes, explorers stepping onto new planets, guided only by star maps. That wonder, that hope, humanity's entire relationship with the stars. The entity reacted strongly. A wave of energy so massive that the entire scout rattled past through the void. Aaron held the controls tightly as alarms screamed. Lyra warned, Commander, energy overload approaching danger threshold. Hold steady, Aaron shouted, gritting his teeth. The wave did not crush them. Instead, it enveloped the scout gently, almost protectively, before fading into calm pulses. The alarms quieted, replaced by a soft hum. Then, something extraordinary happened. The entity began forming shapes slowly, delicately, like stars blooming inside its enormous body. The sparks grew brighter, taking the form of small suns, each pulsating with faint warmth. It was trying to recreate what he had shown, trying to understand starlight not as energy to consume, but as something meaningful. Aaron felt his throat tighten. It's learning. It understands. Arend. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. Without warning, the scout jolted violently. A gravitational ripple surged through the void, bending the space around them. Aaron's eyes snapped open. Lyra, what's happening? There is another source, Lyra said urgently. An external pull. The entity is changing course. Aaron checked the readings. His stomach twisted. The entity was turning slowly but surely toward the galactic center. No. Aaron breathed. Not there. Not there. Not there. Not the core. The galactic core held a supermassive black hole. If the entity approached it, The gravitational forces could destabilize both it and everything nearby. Worse, if it attempted to absorb energy from the core, the consequences could ripple across galaxies. He pushed the scout's engines to full power and followed the entity. The void shook with each massive pulse of movement. The closer it drifted toward the center, the more chaotic the forces became. Aaron transmitted light bursts urgently, broadcasting fear, warning, danger, anything he could to get its attention. But the entity continued forward, drawn by the unimaginable energy of the core. "Lyra, maintain transmission," Aaron ordered. "Transmission ongoing," she responded. He pushed the scout closer, dangerously close to the swirling tendrils of the entity's energy field. The hull groaned under the strain as the gravitational pull increased. He needed to get inside. He needed to communicate from within. Aaron took a breath so deep it shook his chest. "Prepare the shuttle for entry. Commander, the internal structure is volatile. Entry could be fatal. It's the only way. If we lose control of the situation, everything, every star, every world, could be in danger." He aligned the scout with a shimmering seam in the entity's surface, one that pulsed like a living gate. As he approached, the seam opened. Not violently, but gently. As if inviting him inside, Aaron eased the vessel forward, and the scout slid through. Inside, the universe changed. The interior was vast beyond comprehension, a landscape of flowing light and shadow. Energy streams arched like rivers, pulsing with colors he had never seen. The stars absorbed long ago flickered like memories in a dream, echoes of light waiting for release. Aaron floated forward, feeling a deep thrum through the ship's hull. It wasn't just movement, it was emotion, fear, hunger, loneliness. He spoke softly. "I'm here. I understand. But you can't go to the core. It will destroy you. And everything else." He transmitted images of collapse, of the core's immense gravity, of what would happen if the entity tried to consume its energy. The entity pulsed sharply, as if startled. Waves of uncertainty rippled through the space around him. Aaron closed his eyes and sensed something deeper, his own fear. Not fear of dying, but fear of losing the stars forever. Fear of a galaxy without light. Fear of a future where everything humans had built would vanish. The entity paused. It listened. Energy around him slowed, like a massive heartbeat calming. Light flowed through its interior, forming shapes that echoed his memories. Stars, nebulae, galaxies, life. Then, something incredible happened. The entity projected its own memory. A vast region of space, long ago, where all light had faded. It had drifted alone through endless cold, searching for warmth, for survival. It had no concept of life, of worlds, of meaning, only the drive to continue existing. Aaron understood. "You didn't know." A soft pulse answered him. He transmitted again, carefully forming a message through emotion and light. "You can exist without taking stars. You can coexist. You can learn." The entity hesitated. Its enormous body trembled with conflicting impulses, instinct drawing it toward the core, newfound understanding pulling it away. Aaron placed his hand on the console and whispered, "Please, trust me." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the entity changed course, slowly, gently. It turned away from the galactic core. The gravitational ripples faded. The void calmed. Streams of energy inside it brightened like dawn breaking through darkness. Aaron slumped back in his seat, exhaustion crashing over him. He had done it. Humanity had reached an impossible intelligence, reached it with empathy, not force, and saved the heart of the galaxy. But the journey was not over. The entity's interior began to pulse in a new rhythm, one Aaron had never seen before. It was forming something bright, concentrated, and intensely warm. A star, not absorbed, created. Aaron's breath caught. "You're learning, creating new light." He realized something astonishing. The entity was not only listening, it was preparing to return the stars. Hope surged through him, warm and fierce. This was only the beginning. Aaron Vey floated in the Scout, watching the vast entity ahead. It had become less of a threat and more of a mystery. The once dark mass now glimmered faintly with scattered lights, each one pulsing like a heartbeat. Some of them even resembled stars, or at least the memory of stars. Aaron could hardly believe it. After days of observation and careful communication, a pattern was emerging. The entity was learning. It was adapting. Lyra's calm voice broke through his thoughts. "Commander, energy readings indicate stabilization. The internal patterns resemble known star systems. Recovery appears possible if current interaction continues." Aaron nodded. "Then we continue. Carefully, Lyra. We need to teach it to coexist, not just mimic. That is the only way the stars will survive." He transmitted another series of pulses, carefully coded with patterns that represented human experience of light, the warmth of the sun, the gentle glow of distant stars, and the connection humans felt to their night sky. He projected memories into the signal. Children watching meteors streak across the sky, explorers discovering new planets, families gazing at sunsets together. It was not just light, it was life, emotion, and meaning. The entity responded immediately. Energy streams shifted and expanded, forming clusters of light that reflected the patterns Aaron sent. The faint constellations inside its body began to stabilize, glowing more vividly, as if the being were learning the difference between energy that sustains and energy that harms. It pulsed again, larger this time, and Aaron felt the energy wash through the scout vessel. It was powerful, but not dangerous. For the first time, he felt hope. Days passed. Aaron continued the careful transmission of human understanding. He refined the pulses, experimenting with different patterns, teaching the entity the value of balance. Each interaction brought more stars back into existence, first as tiny flickers in the void, then slowly growing brighter. It was painstaking work, but progress was undeniable. The entity was no longer consuming blindly. It was beginning to preserve, recreate, and coexist. One morning, as Aaron monitored the readings, the entity pulsed in a way he had never seen before. The Scout's sensors struggled to keep up. Streams of energy erupted outward, forming shapes that were unmistakably star systems. Galaxies flickered into existence within the entity's massive structure. Lyra analyzed the data and spoke with quiet awe. "Commander, this is unprecedented. It is creating entire systems internally, almost like a library of stars. Recovery is accelerating." Aaron's heart swelled. Humanity had always dreamed of preserving knowledge, of passing it on across generations. Now, somehow, they were doing the same for the stars. He realized that the entity had been trying to survive, yes, but it was capable of learning to preserve, to respect, and to coexist. And it had learned from him. The entity shifted, drifting toward a nearby cluster of star systems that had survived the initial darkness. Its energy pulses now seemed deliberate, careful. It was not a mindless devourer anymore. It was a being capable of choice, capable of understanding. Aaron could almost sense its curiosity as it explored the remaining stars, scanning them gently, as if asking permission to touch them. He realized then what the next step had to be. He could not simply observe anymore. He had to engage fully, to teach coexistence through action. The scout vessel carefully moved closer, maintaining a safe distance while still sending transmissions. He sent patterns representing balance and harmony. Stars placed in orbits, planets in gentle rotation, energy flows that supported life rather than consumed it. The entity responded in kind. Streams of energy swirled outward, illuminating the void in bursts of white, yellow, and blue light. Stars flickered back into existence across the sector. The transformation was gradual but undeniable. Aaron felt a thrill unlike anything he had ever experienced. He had not fired a weapon. He had not imposed force. He had used human ingenuity, empathy, and patience to create change on a cosmic scale. But the work was not without danger. The entity was immense, and even small miscalculations could destabilize energy flows. Arin's hands moved steadily over the controls, adjusting pulses, refining patterns, and monitoring the feedback. Lyra provided constant analysis, helping to predict how the entity would respond. It was a delicate dance, a test of skill, creativity, and courage. Over the following days, Arin noticed something extraordinary. The entity began to create structures of light that mirrored real star systems it had absorbed. He saw familiar patterns resembling his homeworld solar system, and even distant systems humans had catalogued during their explorations. It was as if the entity were learning not just the mechanics of stars, but their significance to life and civilization. Arin realized that humanity's most powerful tools were not weapons or technology alone, they were understanding, creativity, and empathy. He had reached across the vast gulf of the unknown, bridging the gap between a human mind and an intelligence that spanned light years. The stars were returning because he had found a way to communicate without force. Lyra broke the silence. "Commander, preliminary analysis suggests the entity is capable of full cooperation. Energy distribution patterns indicate potential for universal restoration if interaction continues." Arin exhaled slowly, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. He had not only preserved the stars but had begun the process of restoring the universe itself. Yet he knew the work was far from finished. The entity was vast, its needs complex, and the galaxy was immense. But for the first time, hope seemed real. He transmitted a final sequence for the day, a pattern representing not just starlight, but life itself, the interconnections between energy, planets, and the civilizations that depended on them. The entity pulsed brightly, almost as if acknowledging comprehension. The faint darkness of the void gave way to a soft glow, and Arin smiled, knowing that light was returning. In the following weeks, the process accelerated. Stars returned to their places, their light steady and true. The entity worked alongside him, not as a threat, but as a partner. Arin marveled at the sight. Galaxies forming within the entity, then being released into the surrounding space in perfect alignment. It was creation on a scale humanity had never witnessed. Through it all, Arin realized something profound. Humans were small, fragile, and limited. Yet their curiosity, courage, and empathy allowed them to influence forces far greater than themselves. The entity had not just consumed stars, it had been taught to value them, to preserve them, to understand the significance of light. Humanity had extended its reach, not with dominance, but with understanding. One evening, as Arin gazed at the restored starfield, Lyra spoke softly. "Commander, the entity has stabilized. Energy readings indicate minimal risk of uncontrolled consumption. Restoration is nearly complete." Arin allowed himself a rare moment of relief. He looked out at the countless stars, some flickering faintly but most shining steadily. The darkness that had once threatened to engulf the galaxy had receded. Life, light, and wonder had returned. He thought of Earth, of the night skies that had inspired generations of humans to explore, to dream, to reach for the unknown. Now, he had played a role in restoring that wonder on a galactic scale. It was humbling, exhilarating, and profoundly human. As he prepared to return to the Odyssey, he realized that the entity had changed as well. No longer was it a consuming force. It had learned to preserve, to coexist, and perhaps even to understand the significance of the stars it had once taken. Humanity had reached across the void and left a mark, not with weapons, but with understanding, empathy, and creativity. The scout vessel moved carefully alongside the entity, guiding it as it released the final clusters of absorbed stars. Streams of light flowed outward, settling into proper orbits, forming planets, suns, and entire systems. The galaxy seemed to breathe again, its rhythms restored by the combined efforts of human ingenuity and alien intelligence. Arin watched, awestruck, as the last of the missing stars reappeared. The void that had once pressed against him like a heavy curtain was now filled with light, color, and life. The entity pulsed one final time, a gesture that felt almost like gratitude. He sat back in his seat, exhaustion settling over him, but also a deep sense of fulfillment. Humanity had faced the impossible and prevailed, not with weapons or dominance, but with the qualities that defined them: courage, empathy, creativity, and determination. The stars were gone, and now they were returned, a testament to the power of understanding. As he prepared to leave, Aaron whispered softly, "The stars are back, and we will never forget how fragile, beautiful, and vital they are." Lyra's voice echoed gently in reply, "Humanity has made an impact, Commander. The universe remembers." The scout vessel turned toward the Odyssey, the entity drifting peacefully alongside, no longer a threat but a guardian of the very stars it had once consumed. Aaron allowed himself a final glance at the restored cosmos, feeling a profound connection to all that existed: the stars, the planets, the life they supported, and the intelligence that had learned to coexist. The galaxy was alive again, and humanity had played its part. The adventure was over, but the lessons endured. Courage, understanding, and empathy had reached across light years and transformed the unknown into something familiar, something magnificent. Aaron Vey leaned back, letting the hum of the scout's engines fill the cockpit, and for the first time in weeks, he felt at peace. The stars were gone, once. Now they were returned, and humanity had proven that even in the face of incomprehensible forces, hope, creativity, and determination could shine brighter than any star. The universe stretched endlessly before him, full of mystery and wonder. But one thing was certain: the stars were back, and humanity had left its mark among them.